why don't you tell us a little bit about your business, what you're up to, your current goals?
Thanks, Amber. Thanks. Good to talk to you. Right. So I have set up relatively recently, shall I add, a business called Eternity Data. And the purpose of the business is to transform the way that people, you, me, and others around the world access and make sense of their medical data. It's a big vision, but every great journey starts from the first step. And the first step, you were there to manage, one employee, one user onto the Microsoft package, and it's incredibly valuable.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always quite interesting when you first set up your Microsoft tenant for the first time, because there's actually a lot of things you have to configure, things which are just really annoying, and most people who start businesses don't want to have to bother with that. So it can take a good couple of hours of clicking around, even for someone who knows what they're doing. So really, really happy to have saved you that pain.
And especially if you don't have the current technical know-how, if you are like me, who has had an IT department in my previous role for the last 20 plus years, to do all this work for you, even if you could have done it 20 years ago, today it's a cloud environment, it's a completely different setup, and although I understand broadly what you do, it took you minutes, when things like I could have done potentially would have taken days, and I would have got it wrong anyways. So no, it's definitely very valuable.
So in terms of the medical data, is that going to be patient-centric, or is that going to be kind of more for health bodies to translate the information they have to people?
It is going to be both, but it's going to be in the hands of us, the individual, controlled by us, whom this data is actually for and about. And it should be about us choosing who we want to share it with and for what purpose. So it's about patient empowerment, a big thing, and then the other part is about longevity. So it is a consumer-centric, a patient-centric project.
That's really cool. It's definitely something that actually I think the medical profession try to be very sensitive to, the sharing of patient data, but at the same time, actually, it is a simple fact that when you're working at a very larger scale in terms of the UK is a leader in genomics, for example, because the NHS just has so much information on everyone in the country, and that's massive opportunity. But at the same time, if you don't manage data, there's a lot of risk, a lot of room for misalignment in priorities of the patient to the health provider.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is, and I had an interview, and I meet a lot of people at the moment to hear, since this is the early stage of effectively a stealth project, really working under the radar. We came to talk about this person is a medical professional. She had a health check with the GP, something that millions of people have every year. And not only did she, and I've had a health check myself, they actually don't show you the data at all. And then the attitude is, don't call us, we will call you if there's something wrong with you. Which is, you can see where this is coming from. It comes from the idea that, well, if we provide all this stuff back to you, Amrit, you will come up with all sorts of problems and you will not be able to understand the data. So what you have, the challenges we have is access to data in the first place, and then understanding of this data second. There are more things, but clearly even the simple thing, well, okay, so if I had a tool that helped me access the data and another tool that make me understand it, then of course there are gazillions of other healthcare professionals who I may want to use this data combined with something else with that could take this care that are provided with to another level. So it's nobody's interest really to silo this data for fear that you might overconsume or overreact as a patient. It's just the wrong logic here, and it's everywhere. And so we need to break that, and we need to really trust consumers to grab hold of their data and use it in a way that makes sense. And in the end, that will unlock a whole range of other benefits. And that's really what we need to look at, rather than this paternalistic, conservative model of we know what's best for you. Just stay where you are, and we will tell you if something's wrong with you. It's just not a way to do it.
It's really quite something. I think that's a really powerful vision. I think especially in, well, in the 21st century, the AI century, if you are, people will have access to tools and, I guess, diagnostics to make it a bit computery that will never have existed when health systems were really set up by the state in the 20th century and even the 19th century.
Absolutely. And to take that to another level, I think if you look at how internet or digital has transformed entire industries, if the taxi unions would have decided how digital should be used, I don't think there will be too many Ubers or Bolts in the streets today. If you let airlines decide, or travel agencies, as was, decide how people should be, then the truth is that the reason that industries and sectors are transformed through digital is that you give consumers, individuals, the choice to use new ways of interacting, accessing those services. And since healthcare has been so supply side driven for so many years, that transformation hasn't happened because patients have no power at all, and we'll give them that.
That is a very cool vision, I have to say. So I suppose we might circle back a little bit about, how confident were you setting up your IT when you started your business? Because at that moment where you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to start a new enterprise. You've been in business for many years, but this is new. Was that something you're like, oh, it's fine, I'll work it out? Or was it a bit scary for you? Kind of, how did that feel for you at that moment?
You feel a bit vulnerable because there are so many things particularly in office technology. You have email. This is a good example. Security, you need to store data. You need to do all of these things. You need to get signatures on your emails and all of these things. Once you're in another environment, you take it for granted, and you don't understand how debilitating or hard it is to get it right. You just say, well, how can this not be just pushing a button and I'm set up? Instead, you have these various providers. You got the Googles, you got the Microsofts, you got others, and then you're like, well, okay, so what should I choose? Why should I choose that? There's always some kind of hidden, you make a decision here and then it impacts what you want to do with your accounting software or something that just doesn't work together. Now you have to, or your website, or your this, and it's endless. Or there's just so many things, you just take them for granted when you work in an environment because they are set up and working in that environment, and now you're in a different place and you just have to make it work yourself, and you say, well, this should be easy, but it isn't, unless you know what you're doing, which is clearly where you come in. You know what you're doing, and for me, that makes the whole difference.
There are definitely sort of layers of complexity when you're setting up IT systems, and as you say, it's so easy to buy something. It's made to be so easy to buy a technology, to actually use it, to make it so that you can sort of proudly show your face in what is maturing but still very competitive markets as well.
And most of these things are you sign up for 12 months. You go off, and then you have a yearly subscription with Wix, you have a yearly subscription with Google for 10 emails, and then you got a yearly subscription with Microsoft for this, and then you're like, actually, do I really need any or all of this, and you realize, no, you don't need all of this. You need probably half of it. And so these are startup mistakes. Just you just don't know what you're doing, and so that's just the startup phase. But of course, then there's the growth phase where you'd say, well, actually now I'm going beyond me trying to look, meaning now I'm just going to add 4 or 5 others who are on the team.
Mhm.
Also need to look like we're part of one unit, and then you take it from there at 5, and then you go to 50, and then you go to 500, and then every single step has its challenges.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really positive way to look at it, actually, because expertise lies in different people in different ways, and you're an expert in healthcare systems and empowering patients and ensuring that people live longer, better lives. I wouldn't dare compete with you if we were to have a debate on health, because I know so very little of kind of those actual conversations that happen in senior levels on different healthcare providers and governments. Whereas in terms of tech, I'm pretty sure I could win in a little argument. And you have a lot of experience in health tech. So what are your thoughts on how technology is changing the sector, kind of globally?
Well, it is a big question. Also, healthcare has been reasonably good at investing in technology, I think. We have been pushing imaging through MRIs and scans and all the things, and we're taking it, using AI to understand these pictures. So there is, machines, robotic interventions. Technology has been easy for healthcare to adopt, partly because healthcare is this funny thing which has, everything just gradually becomes more and more expensive, and we're fine with that somehow. We have been fine with that for the last 60 years. The growth of healthcare costs has grown 2% above inflation since World War II every single year.
Oh, wow.
So you think about, if you spend 2% more than you make every single year for 80 years, eventually you'll find it difficult to make things work. Healthcare has been good at adding costs, and these machines, they provide better care, they provide more care, and it makes healthcare more expensive. Healthcare information technology, with this mantra that tech has been pursuing the better, faster, cheaper, that has not worked at all. So healthcare has been lagging behind. For as much as the technologies, our new better machines have been pushing on, the idea that healthcare could be using tech to be faster, better, cheaper is way behind other sectors. I tend to think that we're probably at least between 10 and 20 years behind other sectors in terms of how we use business tools and patient interaction technologies. For example, finance, banking, who is as regulated as healthcare in terms of what you can and can't do with data and all. They're miles ahead. Miles. There are 2 sides to this. One, a very impressive side, the tech side. Information technology, way behind, underinvested, so much to do.
That's really insightful. Thank you for that. I didn't realize that health spend just grows exponentially like that. That's quite scary.
It is scary, and then it takes a bigger and bigger slice of either the government or it comes from somewhere. And then
Seriously.
it is fascinating, but it is scary. You got to find a way of this eternal growth in cost that we see, and now we had the newish government had another spending round, and now it's again the NHS that gets extra money, as opposed to pretty much everybody else, defense and the NHS. What about education? There's just so many other things that a society needs, and yet healthcare always gets more money because healthcare always go up.
Yeah, and that's a reactive increase in spending, isn't it? It's in order to deal with patient care in the now, whereas, say, investing in physical education for young people and allowing young people to discover sport reduces overweight people and obesity generally, and that has massive implications and knock-on implications for the next century. So it's interesting because I know the UK government termed it as front-loading a lot of their spending, but I suppose they front-loaded it for the parliament, they didn't front-load it for the century.
No, I mean, there is a reasonably, so although we, as perhaps referring to education, we don't go more in school than we did 40 years ago. There's still primary, secondary, tertiary education, and then there's usually a fee for each student or pupil, and that kind of checks out. We don't do more of that, but certainly with people living longer and people living longer with multiple long-term conditions, we have more lives that we cover, and each of them costs more money. And so you just do that equation and say, well, actually, yes, it makes logical sense that healthcare becomes more expensive as new advances to medicine, including those technical machines that we talk about, but also therapies and new types of treating people. It makes sense, and yet it's not. You don't see too many truly disruptive ways of changing that trajectory, as I think you should. That's the multi-billion-dollar opportunity here. Change the trajectory of healthcare is forever increasing in cost just because people actually need healthcare more. It makes sense, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do something about it.
So I suppose I'm going to be a bit cheeky. So are you confident in your business keeping up with that pace? I mean, it sounds like actually that's a snail's pace for most global health systems. So I'm sure you'll be able to beat it. But, where do you kind of see that journey in terms of, it sounds like it's sort of building technology and then having explosive impact almost.
Mm-hmm. I think you have to expect to be part of a movement in this field. It's let's face it, this is broad. A lot of healthcare are government funded, and so it has, including the US, where 40% of healthcare is government, state funded, usually federal driven. So it's and yes, governments and government spend. Public sector has a slightly broader agenda than just than the private sector may have, but so be part of a movement, start something, a new way of doing things. So I think I'm not the only one who thinks like this. Luckily, I would be worried if it was. But for eternity to play a meaningful role in that movement is really what you can aspire to do. And to do that here in the UK, where we are right now, but also in other countries, certainly keen on the EU and on North America as well. So those are my focus areas right now. But yeah, it's a big thing. That's not. I don't deny that, but we'll have a good go at it.
I think that's all you can do, especially if you want to disrupt. If you want to innovate, you have to have a crack. Innovation is drawn from failure that you learn and you apply that in order to, I suppose, fail again and learn again, and then you have something very robust that you can actually say out or put out there and say, we've done our clinical trial-esque innovation on this technology, so we know it works, we know it's proven.
The real thing, and I think all entrepreneurs have a similar logic in that we see a problem which we think we can solve. And those problems can be, my mouse is not moving because I had a cable. I'm going to invent a way to avoid having the cable. To you see an opportunity in particularly SMEs being underserved with business technology services, whereas I'm just seeing this thing about patient power, undisrupted health systems, and a vast and unsustainable cost to healthcare that have just all of these things come together. So I see that problem and I think I can do something about that. But we all think, right, here's the problem, I can fix it. And
Absolutely.
the problems are big and therefore the solutions have to be big. And sometimes the solutions can be a bit smaller because perhaps the problem is a bit smaller. And sometimes we're completely wrong. We think there's a problem, we see there's a problem, but we actually can't fix it. But you know what? If you don't try, you'll never figure that out.